Yep, we are live. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Recruitment Curry Show. We're going to be talking about the 5 factors to help you sell in a downturn. And then today, which is why we have our wonderful guest, Lee Warren. So, Lee is the award-winning author of The Busy Person's Guide to Great Presenting. He's been a sales director at News International, the publishers of the Times newspaper, and he's also been a professional magician and a mind reader. So over to you, Lee. Obviously, I'm sure you'll be able to talk more about yourself to the audience.
Hi, Ketan. Well, thanks very much for inviting me. I know we've met once before. It's quite a nice introduction to have, isn't it? And what's been interesting in my work is, although my work is around sales, it's really more around engaging and persuasive communication. And that comes from a background of those two things coming together. So one background is in sales, particularly corporate B2B sales. And then the other is being a performer. So being someone who has to walk into rooms and connect with people very quickly to get people feeling warm and empathetic and smiling very, very fast. And so I brought those two skills together. And these days I now do a lot of keynote speaking and working with people in workshops, helping them to connect better and be more compelling and confident in their communications.
Fantastic. And just how we connected was, especially on your show with Elite, where you presented, about sales, and especially the ham and pie approach, which let's leave it till the last, because that's something that's going to be with of tremendous help to people, if they really implement that, especially in the times now. And we all know that there are potentially challenging times ahead. So the best thing is to sort of prepare for those times, and then work in that direction to make more sales. So Lee, obviously you work with lots of businesses, and how do you see those businesses preparing to sort of manage these times?
Well, I see lots of different ways of preparing, and even worse, I see lots of people not preparing, just panicking, which is not not an approach I'd advocate. I mean, it depends quite a bit, obviously, on the market and what someone's selling. So, most obviously, there's a clear difference between services and products, for example, in how you might approach a downturn in difficult times. Certainly some of the most successful things many people are doing. I mean, one of the things that happens psychologically in difficult times is everybody tends to hunker down. They tend to narrow in on a very specific area of focus. So, for example, one of my clients is, I don't want to say their name because I work with them, but they do facilities management, for example. So they run buildings, and they'll organize all of the security and the toilet stuff and all those sorts of things. And actually their view is really interesting, because their view is that a recession, a downturn, is very, very good for them, because all of their clients rent the buildings, and in a downturn, their clients in good times, their clients try and do everything because they've got the money to try and do everything. Yeah. So they try and manage the building themselves and outsource loads of things. But in downturn, they focus just on what they're good at. And then they bring in other experts to do that stuff. So in some markets, a downturn can be a good thing if you know precisely what you're good at and where other people need you. So one of the best forms of preparing I've seen most people do is to really focus on the real problems that they solve for their target market, the real deep problems that actually those people are going to have and experience and have magnified in a downturn, and then focus on selling to those.
Of course, and then you mentioned about the psychological aspect. So it's the mindset of the buyers, and then generally from what as a person you'd obviously want to restrict your spend on luxury, and then which is where you mentioned about narrowing down on what your expertise is, and maybe outsource the rest. So from the sales professional's perspective or company's perspective, it's always important to identify what is their sweet spot, and then how can they assist companies in challenging times.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big part of that is, I mean, if I could genuinely do magic, if I could magically give salespeople one gift. The gift I would give them is to be able to see the world from their client's point of view. All right, that's the gift I would give them. And so when we're approaching a downturn or in a downturn, one of the best things that a sales professional can do, and this is true whether you're leading a sales team or whether you're in the sales team, right, facing customers. One of the best things you can do is really get into their world and really see what's happening from their point of view. What are they focused on? What are their problems? What are their priorities? What are they worried about in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time? Because in that way of seeing the world, you start to get a lot of what I call sales ammunition. You start to really understand how they think. You start to really understand how to talk to them in their own language. And also you start to believe much more in your own value. I lived through the last 2 big recessions in the United Kingdom. So in the early 90s, when I first became an adult, when I first moved to London, and then 2008, 2011, I've lived through both of those. And one of the biggest mistakes I've seen salespeople make in those times is they sort of get more energetic. They try and sell more, but they start pushing themselves at their market in ways that are about the salesperson. So in other words, if you imagine, when you go on holiday and you're walking along the beach and there are some people outside the restaurants on the beach and they've got a menu in their hands and they try, they're saying, hello, sir, hello, madam, come and eat here, come and eat here. Well, you immediately push them away because their sales energy it's all about them and they want to take something from you. And then you can imagine another restaurant on that beach, and it's down the corner and it's a little bit hidden and there's a queue to get in. And nobody is outside trying to persuade you. And you sort of feel like you want to go to that restaurant. Why does everybody else want to go there? And one of the things that restaurant has is the sales energy that it has is we are exactly right for our market. We understand our market and we're so good at what we do. You might even have to wait a little bit. And it's very counterintuitive, this, because the instinct when times are difficult is to start selling more, to start pushing more. But it's very often, not always, but it's very often the wrong way to go about it.
Of course, and then it's important for everybody in the business to understand that if there's a downturn, if the times are challenging, then the decision making cycles are going to be longer, and then especially from the sales professionals' perspective, that's the mindset that they need to have, that it's going to take longer than expected, instead of being pushy. Like you mentioned, let me put myself into my client's shoes, see what the challenges are, not just from the end product or service perspective, but internally as well, to come to a certain decisions, maybe, personal, emotional, or even from the budget perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that thing about, and again, this depends very much on what your market is, but if you're selling into corporates or even larger SMEs, the internal decision-making process it's what I call the invisible audience. So when you're talking to perhaps your buyer, you've also always got to be talking to the people they have to go and talk to. And sometimes you'll never meet those people. You'll never even know who they are. And one of the greatest tips that I've picked up myself and certainly tried to transfer to other people is to understand what that process is like. So, how many meetings are they going to go and have? What's the decision-making chain? And then literally to tell your buyer the things that are useful for them to say to that decision chain. So often, in sales meetings, I'll advocate saying things like, look, probably people are going to ask you A and B and C. Well, here's some great information for that. Here's some great stats for that. Or they might say, have they got any great testimonials? Yes, here they are. I've emailed them to you right now so you can use them. So in a way, you need to prepare your buyer. You need to coach your buyer on how to handle those meetings and give them everything they need.
I think those are 2 great points that you mentioned there. One is the invisible audience. So from a sales professional's perspective, we must know, and you must know that who else is involved in the decision making process, or even influencing the decision. That's one. And 2 is building the report to the extent where you get the potential information as well, that okay, fine, who else is involved, what are potential questions that might be asked. And this can come in in any form, maybe the challenges as well, that okay, fine, this is what we're trying to address, and then this is what we want.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and so I couldn't agree more. And some of the ways, some of the ways of building that rapport, of course, are a huge conversation. And most of these things, they tend to be a little bit easier face to face rather than on certainly than on the phone or over email. Virtual calls are somewhere in the middle of that. But getting that rapport involves certainly avoiding one mistake. This is possibly the biggest single mistake I see any sales kind of person make again and again, which is they try and prescribe before they've diagnosed properly. And again, I sit in sales meetings with people. I watch people's sales pitches all the time. And over again, what I see people going for the answer or going for what they're trying to sell far too early. And that's a real way of breaking rapport, actually. And again, pushing yourself at people. And some of the people who are just brilliant at building rapport, they do a few things. They ask more interesting questions than most of us do, because if you ask boring questions, you get boring answers, right? If you ask interesting questions, you get really interesting answers. They're really great at getting clients to talk about themselves and what their pressures are, what their interests are, and they don't rush to a conclusion. And some of the bravest salespeople will say things quite often like, well, look, I'm not sure if what I've got for you is exactly right, but let's look at this bit of it. Or they'll say things like, okay, I'm still not quite clear on what you need. Let's talk about it a bit more. They're very brave, and it's a great way of building rapport. And I have a rule of thumb in my own business. I know when I've got perfect rapport with a client, when they say something to me like, I shouldn't really tell you this, but, right? If they ever say anything like that, I know we're really getting on well.
Definitely. And then, like you mentioned, it's the discovery questions, which are important rather than rushing to the conclusion or following the rule of thumb, which is, ABC, always be closing, which in the hindsight, of the sales process is good, but then you can't start with that mindset of always be closing. Then, you're not looking at the micro, process of asking right questions, getting those right answers, building the rapport, and which is a process in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And always be closing is it's a very old-fashioned way, I think, of thinking about sales. And it's particularly old-fashioned because it predates social media. And it's really easy to underestimate the impact that social media has had on not only on the sales journey, but on how we interact with people in general. So, for example, on a very simple level, if we think about the most classic form of sales, buying a car, before social media, the person selling the car had all the power, right?
Yeah.
So you would have to go to the showroom and you'd sort of know nothing almost, and you'd have to say, I want this kind of car, and they'd show you cars, and they had all the power. They knew how much it was. They knew what the profit margins were. As the buyer, you were quite vulnerable in many ways. Also, once they'd sold you that car and you drive away, that's sort of it. That's the, maybe you call in once a year for a service or something. But with Google, sorry,
go ahead. Sorry.
Just to finish the thought, with Google and social media, that whole equation has turned completely the other way around. Nobody goes to buy a car now, without doing loads of research online. Buyers have the power. They arrive armed with information. And what this means is two things. One is it's so easy to stay in touch. So as buyers, we don't think about closing a sale. We think about opening a relationship. We want to stay in touch with good suppliers. But the other thing is now the problem that buyers have, they used to have the problem they don't have information. Now they have the problem they have too much information. So who do I trust to make sense of this information for me? That's where the dynamic lies now.
Exactly. And then, there's a good part to technology and social media. And then, this actually links in well with one of our points of mindset and the face-to-face meetings. So majority of the sales or business development, especially during COVID and now, has happened over Zoom or video calls. From the mindset perspective, what are your thoughts, especially in a downturn? Do you think meeting customers face to face adds value to the overall process? And then, is that something that sales professionals should sort of execute?
So generally, I think the answer is yes, wherever possible. So I certainly think face to face can add great value. And I think where it's possible and where it's compliant and where it's reasonably easy and stress-free, I think that's true. There are a few caveats. So one is that way the culture of the world is changing around, obviously, climate change and wasteful use of resources. So I think you have to be very cognizant of different cultures around that. So, for example, one client will be very flattered that you've made the effort to go and see them, et cetera, et cetera. Another client might be slightly nervous about how that looks if you've flown to see them or whatever. So I think there's an edge to it these days, which you have to take into consideration. However, generally, if I'm given the choice, I'd much rather see someone in person than on Zoom, and I'd much rather see them on Zoom than just have a phone call, and I'd rather have a phone call than just have an email, right? So I think there's a chain of connection. And where there are some moments where it's not obvious that this is valuable, and one of those is in how clients build their own purchasing decisions. So in other words, as a salesperson, one of the hardest things is to come in at the end of a procurement process. So particularly with corporates, if corporates say, look, we've got this thing, we need exactly this. Here's the process to become a supplier for us. Please fill in 800 pages of forms to try and be a supplier. That's tough. That's really tough to deal with. It takes loads of energy, and often it's just a waste of time. So very often with face-to-face, you can find out a lot of these other opportunities that are in very early stages, or perhaps they haven't even happened yet. And in your meeting, you can create them. And you can then be involved at very early stages. And basically, you can help to shape those procurement processes to suit you and your strengths. And you can often short circuit. So it's not necessarily immediately obvious, but that's a way where face-to-face can be really valuable. And also the other thing that's not obvious is you can often get to know the culture of a client and the culture of their organization just by going to see them. There's something about being in the building and meeting some of their colleagues and sitting in reception and whatever. It can really help to give you understanding.
Exactly. So obviously, downturn or no downturn, the mindset has to be of building relationship for you to be ahead of the game, ahead of your competitors. And then, by the way, we've got a couple of questions. So we've got a question from Parth. Should we increase sales activities in a downturn?
I think the answer is yes. But the specific answer is, but be very careful about what the activities are. Now, obviously, it's really hard to be general about this because some people are much more cold call driven. Some people are much more relationship driven or referral driven. On that note, by the way, I think getting testimonials, widening your network in a very trust-based way is one of the really dynamite things to do in a downturn. Because for all the reasons we all know, getting referrals, you get referred at the right level. It's much easier to meet people, to sell to people, to engage with people. So as a general answer, yes, but be careful about what those activities are and make sure you're not becoming that restaurant with the menu on the beachfront and just randomly shoving loads of stuff, because it's not good for you and it's not good for the buyer usually.
Totally. And then we've got a question from Kirsty. Do you think that during a downturn, it is more important to protect current clients from competitors or to sell to new clients?
It's a great question. And I think it's exactly right. So again, with salespeople, there's something about, I've been in sales all my life. I know the energy of salespeople really well. There's something deep in salespeople, and it very often for us where a new client is more exciting than an existing client. Right. And when we get that email in from a new client that says, we want to work with you, XYZ, it's nearly always more exciting than an existing client saying, can we do next year what we did last year? And in many ways, we have to fight that temptation, and we have to make ourselves more excited about our existing clients, because our existing clients, they've paid their dues. They've shown we're our worth to them and their worth to us. They're going to refer us to other people. They're going to move to another business and take us with them. Generally speaking, existing clients are more valuable than new clients. Not always, of course, but yeah. So I think it's exactly right. Protect them, love them, nurture them. And actually, one thing I do sometimes, when you meet new clients and they say, can you give us an introductory offer? I very often say to people, actually, that would mean me punishing my existing clients. What I tend to do is give existing clients introductory offers. So let's say the 5th time we work together, I'll say, oh, let me give you a discount, because I really appreciate it. We now work together for 5 years. It's you're due a discount. So yes, look after your existing clients well.
Totally. So you basically incentivize them, and obviously it's a bit of a treat for them to work with you and then sustain the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Treat is a lovely word. It should feel particularly, when we've got personal relationships with clients, when it's not entirely transactional and online, it should feel like a treat. People should look forward to meeting you, right? They should have a smile on their face, or they should be interested, or it should be a good moment in their day when they meet you.
I think then I'm lucky to be working with so many agencies who sort of love to meet me every couple of months when I travel to the UK.
Yeah, great.
So we were talking about AI and Chat GPT early on, before the LinkedIn Live. How do you think from the sales and business development professionals perspective, they should sort of attune their mindset and things to do to sort of stand apart, because everybody's going to sort of put in those questions, and you're going to have similar kind of responses coming across, and then same sort of pitches.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are lots. I mean, like everybody, I'm still trying to get my head around the astonishing implications. Just in case anybody watching doesn't know, so AI, artificial intelligence, there's now a form of it you can use called Chat GPT, which is a pre-trained brain, basically, and it's quite remarkable what you can do. I mean, you can go to it and ask it for almost any question and to do anything for you. So, for instance, a few days ago, it designed for me a month-long program of healthy eating based on the food I like and my height and my weight, and it took about 4 minutes, including some questions from me. Right? I mean, so the implications were astonishing. So in terms of sales, a few things are probably going to happen. And I think there are a few ways that I'm turning over in my mind how salespeople can use this. So the first is, and this is particularly for those of you who need to have a bit more, if you like, of a personal brand or a personal presence. So all those questions we've been tussling with for ages. How do I show up online? How do I show up on LinkedIn, Instagram, good emails, all that sort of thing? ChatGPT can now give you loads of ideas. What I don't recommend is I don't recommend getting it to do all the work for you. So let's say, for example, if you're in recruitment, I wouldn't go to ChatGPT and say, write me a blog post on how to be a good recruiter. I wouldn't then take that and put that online. But I might go to ChatGPT and say, tell me 10 things about recruitment in 2023 no one's thinking about yet. And it will come up with some answers. And you can then also say to it, make those answers humorous, or make those answers more interesting, or give me some data to justify those answers. So you can get loads of ideas for your own content online, your own personal brand online. That's one way. Another way is you can use this to analyze the problems of your marketplace. So I'm making this up. So let's say, for example, you were selling into retailers. Let's say you're dealing with high street retailers. You could go to ChatGPT and ask it, tell me the biggest worrying trends for retailers in 2023, and it will give you some ideas. They won't necessarily be 100% correct, but it will start your process thinking. You can write in natural language. You can say, I've got a sales meeting tomorrow with XYZ business. They are a financial services firm dealing in this and this and this. What problems are they likely to be thinking about? Or how should I structure my sales meeting? What questions should I definitely ask them? You can use ChatGPT for all this kind of stuff. However, there's a downside, and that is that lots of people are going to be doing versions of this. So, for example, loads of people are going to be using it to write their CVs, right? Yeah. Loads of people are going to go to ChatGPT, say, go to my LinkedIn profile, write me a CV. And that will feel easy, and lots of people will do it. But the problem is a lot of us will start to become the same, right? Exactly. A lot of the wording will be the same, will feel the same. And the good news, if you're in sales, is that I don't have a crystal ball, but I think this will mean that personal touches, personal connection, personal communication will become more important, because we'll have all this information and we won't know, has an AI written this? Is this real? Did someone take an hour to write it or 1 minute to write it? I need to see you face to face. I need to talk to you because I've got all the information, but can I trust it? So anyone who's good at face to face, anyone who's good at sales in person will stand out a bit more.
So, which is where, again, the crux of the matter is that, you got to be prepared to, spend time developing relationships, and then that there's no right time. You start now, You don't start, when there's an actual downturn, or when there's a challenging situation. So totally.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lovely old, I think it's a Chinese phrase, isn't it? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. So yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, this is a networking question in many ways, and of course, your network will be a real help to you if you've got a good network as a salesperson. But build your network before you need it. Always, it's a golden rule.
Exactly. And then, lastly, the ham and pie approach. Lee, that's what I think, most of the people here will like. And then I really loved it, when you discuss this, in the Elite Forum.
Well, so it's very simple, really. So it's a way of thinking about being more engaging, more persuasive in your communications, whether that's talking to somebody or writing an email or putting a pitch together. And it's an acronym, HAMPIE, HAMPIE, and it stands for some really simple ideas. So HAM stands for hearts and minds. And the idea is very basic. It's when we're engaging with people, when we're building relationships, when we're connecting with people, when people are listening to our ideas, when they're considering our products and services, very, very often the human decision-making process will be that somebody will make an emotional decision first, and then they'll justify that decision rationally afterwards. So HAM, HAM, is a reminder to you, go for the emotion first. Get a connection with someone. Get someone smiling, or get them thinking. Tell them something they didn't know. Build a bit of rapport, right? Get a warm feeling in the meeting. Go for that stuff first before you go for the minds. So don't throw your pitch deck at them. Don't start with a complex slide in a meeting. And a really simple example of this on our call today is, everybody on the call, if I were to ask you, do you think spinach, the vegetable spinach, is healthier for you, better for you than chocolate and cakes and sugary things? Most people on this call, you'd probably say, yes, spinach is healthier for me, better for me than chocolate and cakes. And if I were to ask you honestly, do you eat spinach more often than you eat chocolate and sugary treats? Most people would say no, right? Most people say, and I've asked tens of thousands of people this question, and I know the answer. Most people say no. And why? And I'm just speaking for myself. It's because I like sugary things more than I like spinach. I made that emotional decision a long time ago. And nobody can change my mind just using facts. So if somebody saw me eating some chocolate, they can say, Lee, don't eat that chocolate bar. It's 2,000 calories. And my brain will say, it's only 2,000 calories, right? I will change the shape of the universe to suit that emotional prejudice. And then PIE, P-I-E, stands for just a really quick way of remembering some ways to get this emotional connection. So P is pictures. So paint pictures in people's minds. Tell stories. Use metaphors, analogies, easy comparisons. People who are very engaging, they tend to talk visually all the time. They say, where we want to be is ... Wouldn't it be great if we could ... Imagine if ... Describe to me, tell me, explain to me. They're always thinking visually. The I of PIE stands for interest. And this is something we've talked about a lot already, but you've got to relentlessly focus on what's interesting to your customer, your client, right? You've got to really focus on them, not on yourself. And then the E stands for enthusiasm. And it just means the first person you have to sell to always is yourself. You have to really believe your own stuff. You have to be able to articulate your value. You have to know why you're solving really meaningful problems for your clients, why it matters to them, what you're doing for them. And you have to be enthusiastic about that. So in a brief rundown, that's what HAMPIE stands for.
It's amazing, hearts and minds is what you got to conquer before you actually present spinach.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, it's really simple advice, but it's one of those things. It's a bit like, if you want to get in shape, you've got to go to the gym and eat salad, right? Everybody knows that, and yet most of us will pay someone to remind us of that, right? We pay personal trainers to remind us of these because we forget, because we get busy. And it's like this in sales. We know we've got to get an emotional connection, but we forget over and over again. We know we shouldn't talk about ourselves too much, and we forget over and over again.
It's the typical transactional mindset that comes into picture, because what you got on mind is I've got to close, and then you forget all the nuts and bolts involved in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Or sometimes the opposite happens. We get too bogged down in the nuts and bolts. We get too bogged down in the processes and the systems and the everything, and we forget to keep that emotional connection by focusing on value, focusing on the relationship, focusing on the real outcome for the client.
So in terms of the takeaway, would you say that relationship building is obviously it's a lifetime worth of activity that one must sort of keep going irrespective of the situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to the theme of in a downturn, I think if you could only do one thing really well, it would be keep your relationships and build good new relationships. Definitely in sales, because it brings so many opportunities and it creates opportunities that didn't exist before you had the relationship.
Fantastic. Lee, thank you very much for sharing your insights on selling in the downturn, and especially the ham pie approach. I'm sure the audience, obviously would have loved it. And thanks for being on Recruitment Curry.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.